welcome to Storytime with Mr. Ryan. Today is April 23rd, which means today we celebrate the birth and the death of William Shakespeare, widely considered to be one of the greatest poets and playwrights of all time. This is A Child's Portrait of Shakespeare by Lois Burdett. Now, just to preempt this story, we ask ourselves, who is William Shakespeare? I asked my 7 and 8-year-old students, and their answers were surprising. The whole class became detectives. We looked at pictures and read historic accounts of the bard. I guided the search, but let the children have the freedom to imagine themselves back in Shakespeare's time. They were soon living the part and were so absorbed that in their imaginations they became Shakespeare. But let their unedited work speak for itself. Please feel free to pause throughout this story time to read some of this amazing unedited work by the 7 and 8-year-olds of Lois's classroom. And I also hope you enjoy these artistic illustrations they've also provided us. Let's hop on in, shall we? On a day that was just like today, but many years ago, a boy was born in England who we think you all should know. This lad grew up to write a lot of bright and famous plays. Ideas that consumed his mind could fill up many days. Now, can you guess the name of this important writing man? Of course, it's William Shakespeare. We will tell you all we can. The first part of our story is of where Will started from. So maybe we should let you know about his dad and mom. John Shakespeare was a glover and a wool dealer, you see. He made a decent living and things were happy as could be. Mary Arden was his wife, a local farmer's daughter. She lived with John on Henley Street, content with all life brought her. They were respected citizens and lived in style and grace in Stratford upon Avon, near a busy marketplace. On April 23rd, while light was fading from the sky, the silent air was shattered by a baby's lusty cry. The infant was the family's third. The first 2 girls met death, so William was an only child when drawing his first breath. His parents could not comprehend when gazing down with glee that little William was to be a writing prodigy. 3 days later, at a church, the tiny tot was christened. Small William was anointed, while his parents watched and listened. John was weak with happiness as he looked upon his boy. His sweet and tiny infant was a source of utter joy, and Mary's heart was leaping as she held her baby near. His sounds of soft contentment were a ballad to her ear. But times were not quite perfect in those first few days of life, for William was a normal child who caused his mom some strife. His cries were loud and constant through the minutes of the night. Poor Mary mourned her missing sleep and William's appetite. Now, William grew robust and strong, avoiding the Black Death, which killed so many babies, taking life with one cold breath. Will's childhood days were happy, and 4 years quickly passed. He seemed to have good fortune that was always going to last. His dad had been appointed to a job of some renown. His title was High Bailiff, or the mayor of their town. But what did William do all day? It's hard for us, you see, to visualize a time without Nintendo or TV. There were no movie cinemas or arcades to enthrall. In fact, we must state here, there were no theaters at all. Back then, the actors roamed in carts to show the people plays. They set up in a local square and worked for several days. It must have been exciting in the year that Will was 5, when the players of the Queen at his village did arrive. And little Will rushed out to watch the Queen's men by their wagon. He sat in rapture while they put on St. George and the Dragon. John paid them all 9 shillings for their work upon that day. Then they gathered up their costumes and went on their merry way. When Will turned 6 or 7, he was sent to grammar school. He had to study hard because the punishments were cruel. The days were long and tiring. They began at early dawn. They lasted till late afternoon when light was almost gone. Will studied hard at Latin, geometry, and Greek. He also read the Bible in the schoolroom, which was bleak. Now, girls of William's age were not permitted to attend. They had to stay at home to help with housework and to mend. When William was 14, his father had a lot of trouble. It seemed within a year or two his life had turned to rubble. For John was deep in debt, which had amounted over time. He never went to church, which was considered then a crime. He missed his council meetings and he mortgaged his estate. He couldn't pay his taxes and his bills were often late. But William still survived this mess and grew to be 18. Then a pretty girl, Anne Hathaway, arrived upon the scene. 'Twas quite a walk to ask her out, we think you will agree, for she lived about a mile away in nearby Shottery. We call her home the cottage now, and it is full of charm, but back when Anne was living there, the name was Hewlin's Farm. The bard pursued her gallantly with letters of devotion. He knew this love was more than just a silly passing notion. Anne had noticed William too. They often saw each other. And soon the couple knew that they were meant for one another. He asked her for her hand, and she agreed with blushing cheeks. And they were married quietly in just a few short weeks. The bishop signed the papers back in 1582, and so they were united with the simple words, I do. Their married life was quickly blessed. Things could not stay the same, for Anne soon had a baby girl. Susanna was her name. A few years later, Anne had twins to William's great delight. Hamnet Shakespeare, Judith too, a sweet and joyous sight. William was enchanted. They were precious as could be. He held his babies gently as he rocked them on his knee. Now, all these kids were stuffed into the home of William's dad. This overcrowded house was simply driving William mad. Soon William went to London, where his fortune could be made. Though he missed his wife and kids, the trip just couldn't be delayed. London was a city full of life and spirit too. William looked for work, although the jobs around were few. Now, theater was growing to some new and splendid heights, despite the fact that certain people frowned upon these sights. So when William started slowly as a call or water boy, he always worked his hardest, but these jobs held little joy. Then he became an actor with a fine dramatic flair. William took on many roles, and his talents he did share. He adored this way of life, but his work was rather brief. The deadly plague hit London, bringing many people grief. The English did not know what was the cause of this disease. They stayed within their houses, hoping God would hear their pleas. For 2 long years, the theaters were silent, dark, and cold. And William wrote some poems which he found were quickly sold. That second year, as Christmas time, a present came Will's way. He'd been commissioned by the Queen to come perform a play. And so to Greenwich Palace, William set off at quick speed. He showed his play to all the court, a fine and honored deed. The Queen was just ecstatic with the work that Will had done. It seemed that all of William's happy fortunes had begun. His luck continued through the years until one stormy eve, young Hamnet died. A tragic loss, his family left to grieve. His son was just 11 when he left his earthly frame. He was buried 'neath the headstone, which was printed with his name. Poor William was a broken man and felt an aching loss. He knelt and wept in sorrow at his son's secluded cross. The next few years continued at a rather quiet pace. Then, in 1597, William Shakespeare bought New Place. The dwelling was impressive, and it stood on Chapel Street, though for William, without Hamnet, success was bittersweet. But time is the great healer, and he slowly felt renewed. William focused on his work and regained a happy mood. He turned back to his poetry, his vivid lines of thought. He immersed himself in words and the dreams that he once sought. But an actor and a writer must also have a stage. The theaters in London were all the current rage. Since there was no place to rent, William built one of his own. He cherished this new playhouse, the Globe, as it was known. The Globe was open to the sky, so plays were in the day. The poor folks stood about the stage, a penny they did pay. They were labeled groundlings and could get quite loud and rude. If they didn't like the play they saw, they'd even throw their food. Others paid a good deal more for shelter from the rain. But on opening day for Shakespeare, not one person did complain. Sometimes he wrote great tragedies like Hamlet and Macbeth that told of trial and misery while weeping over death. He also wrote some comedies and plays about the past. The many kings of England were quite often in his cast. When the good queen died at 70 in the year 1603, the new King James paid William for more plays that all could see. He dubbed the troupe the King's Men and lent them his support. Then William and his partners were invited to his court. The palace was called Whitehall. They performed there quite a lot. 'Twas near 200 times, in fact, their acting skills were sought. They also triumphed at the Globe. Their group achieved much fame. In London, William Shakespeare had become a household name. The English people liked Will's plays. His works were well received. They flocked to William's theater to watch the tales he weaved. A happy smile lit up his face, for things were going well. It seemed all London was enthralled by Will's dramatic spell. Yet life did not leave William with his happiness for long. The winds of fate were whipping up another mournful song. The warm June day was grim when William saw the ashes fall upon the grave of what had been his dearest dream of all. The Globe was putting on a play when things were set awry. A small cannon had been fired that sent cinders to the sky. They fell upon the thatch, which had formed a partial roof, and William's treasured theater exploded with a poof. His eyes grew wide in horror as a single fiery gust snatched up his globe in burning hands and crushed it into dust. William's heart was broken, though no mortal blood was spilled. His dreams now lay in ashes, and his spirit had been killed. He slipped back to his quiet home and lived his final years, recalling all that was his life, his happiness and tears. William's 52nd birthday is recorded as his last. On that said day all Stratford mourned, the flags were at half-mast. 'Twas in the church of Trinity dear Will was laid to rest, and of this loss a friend of his most surely said to best, "The Avon wept 1,000 tears without her loving friend. The very flowers hung their heads as though it were the end." Yet at that time Will's gentle soul did mark its final page. The curtain closed, and William Shakespeare exited the stage. Although the bard's life now is but an echo from the past, his words are with us still today and will forever last. Thank you guys so much for watching and reading along with me. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about William Shakespeare, and I hope you enjoyed these fantastic illustrations done by the wonderful children of this classroom. Please feel free to check out my other stories on this channel, or if you're looking for fun activities you can do from home, go ahead and check out veronalibrary.org. children. Thanks for watching, everyone. Happy birthday, Shakespeare. Until next time, I'll be seeing you. Bye.